Alright, y'all, in the last video we went over how to change the size of your image and how to crop and straighten your image. Honestly, kind of some boring stuff, but had to go over it anyway. Now we're going to talk about our selection tools, which I think is a lot more fun, in my opinion. More fun things you can do with your selection tools. So for this tutorial, I do have to pull up Pixlr just to show you guys like the tools that you'll be using. Pixlr, like I mentioned last time, doesn't have all of the same tools that you have in Photoshop, but you still have quite a few that you can work with. So the ones you guys will be using in Pixlr will be this rectangular marquee tool, a lasso tool, and then the wand tool, which I'll talk about them in Photoshop. Just wanted to let you know ahead of time. These are the ones that you can use in Pixlr for this other stuff. Okay, so in case you saw that, I just duplicated my background layer. Now, this is where I kind of wish I could maybe I'll show you on a web video later or something, but like I want to talk about layers and how they work. There's this analogy that I like to use where layers are kind of like pieces of paper stacked on top of each other. So let's say you have like a base piece of paper, you cut out a star, you put that on top of the paper. You cut out a moon shape and then you put that on top of the star and on top of the piece of paper that was already there. You would have 3 layers, right? And basically the layer that's on top is the one that you're going to be seeing, because if that moon is on top of the star is going to be kind of like cut up, right? You're not going to see the whole star. You're not going to see the whole piece of paper because you've got a star and a moon on top of it. Now, what I did as far as duplicating my background layer, basically I made a copy of the picture, right? Because the background or locked layer that we have right now is just the picture itself. If you right click and then select duplicate layer, it'll bring this little pop-up up. Do you want to make a copy of your background layer? Yes, you do. If you would like to name it, this is where you would type it in. I like to keep it as background copy anyway because it's really obvious what it is. So notice how this is highlighted in gray? That's called my active layer. That means I am currently working with this layer. It's literally the same image, right? I just made a copy of it. The reason I did this is I want to show you how we're going to edit our image later, right? So we're going to use the selection tools, and then as we make those edits, we can actually compare to the background. So anyway, if you want to duplicate your background layer, go ahead and do that. Not the worst thing if you don't do that, because I know it's a little bit different in Pixlr. But anyway, so our selection tools. Selection tools are great because you're going to use them basically all the time. You know how I just talked about cutouts of like stars and moons? You would make a cutout with your selection tools if you had like a picture of a star or a picture of a moon that you're editing. So we're actually going to work with these first 4 tools on our toolbar. We talked about the crop tool already. Now I'm going to talk about our rectangular marquee tool, our lasso tool, our magic wand, or our quick selection tool, and the magic wand tool. Okay, this first tool on your toolbar, this is called the move tool, which moves around whatever you want to select. You don't need to do that right now though, so I'll talk about it later. Anyway, first up, we've got our rectangular marquee tool. So, just to show you one way you can get creative with the selection tool is you click and drag to make your rectangle, or an ellipse, right? So I just right clicked on the tool. You also have an elliptical marquee tool, which is going to make a circular selection. With the rectangular marquee tool, you click and drag. It's going to make these dotted lines around your selection. Basically, whatever is inside of the dotted lines, that's what you currently have selected. For this, I'm going to actually use some image adjustments to change the tones of your image. If you're on Pixlr, it's just going to say adjustments up at the top. But if you're on Photoshop, up at the top in your menus, right? So your menus again are File, Edit, Image, Layer, etc. You're going to go into the Image menu and you'll see an option that says Adjustments. For the sake of this, keeping it simple, we're going to just go into Hue and Saturation. Ignore some of that other stuff. But I forgot to mention this, you guys. Photoshop is really fun. Play around with it. That's how you're going to learn how to use Photoshop, is literally using Photoshop. Also, there's this website that I've already used, helpx.adobe.com/Photoshop, and they have hundreds of tutorials that are available to you. So if you actually like taking pictures and editing your pictures, use those. Anyway, keeping it simple. We're just going to adjust hue and saturation today, which basically is changing the colors of your image, right? Open that up. You just drag on the little triangles to adjust the colors, and notice how my colors inside of the square are adjusting from the hue. Saturation basically means, do you want to brighten up your colors or take your colors away? Adjust this. You guys, the values right here, it's going to tell you how much you're adjusting that setting. You don't have to copy me exactly for that. Mess around with it. Make a change inside of a rectangle. Once you're done and you like the change that you made, you hit OK. Now we've got the change. One thing you'll notice, if you still have the dotted line around your selection, on a Mac computer, the keyboard shortcut to deselect is Command D. On a normal computer, aka not a Mac, it's Control D, which will also, I've learned it will also work in Pixlr as well. Anyway, that just gets rid of your selection. Let's move on to the lasso tool. Now, the lasso tool honestly can be kind of a pain because you have to be kind of decent at drawing when you're using the lasso tool. So let's say we want you, with the lasso tool, you get to make more of a specific selection. So I'm going to actually draw around the plate. And the way that it works is you click, I already messed it up. Honestly, this is not my favorite tool. I'm not going to lie. I don't have a steady hand, so I have trouble with this tool. Okay, lasso tool, see? You click and drag, and you move your mouse or your trackpad if you're on a laptop, and you go all the way around your entire selection, and you have to meet where you started, or else it's going to mess it up. All right, obviously not my best work. I'm on a laptop. I don't have a mouse. It's a lot easier to do with a mouse. But generally, when you want to be better at editing, you also want to be better at making selections and making them really good. For this, I'll show you guys how to do cutouts a little later, but for this, again, we're going to keep it simple and make an image adjustment, aka adjusting the tones and the colors of your image. So go to Image, the menu up at the top. Let's adjust your brightness and contrast. Same thing. Move those dials around. Oh, I like that. And then hit OK. And then again, Command D will deselect. Yeah, not the best. Again, with the lasso tool, make sure you go all the way around and meet back to where you started, or else if you don't, it's just going to automatically do it for you. Like this is me drawing a half circle and it's like, oh, let's just cut it halfway through. Anyway, that's the lasso tool. My personal favorite. Now you Pixlr users, from what I understand, there's no quick selection tool. But if you look on your toolbar, there's a little paintbrush with the dotted line around it. This is called the quick selection tool. And in my opinion, it's the best because you just click and drag and it senses like the pixels and the change in the image to make your selection. So notice how as I was trying to select my pastry, it went out here. I think I got a little too close to the white. The good news is if you don't make the perfect selection with like the first time, with the quick selection tool you can easily go back and forth between making the selection and deselecting. So clicking and dragging initially will just add to your selection. To take away from your selection, you're going to go into your options at the top. The subtract will take away from your selection, right? It works like a paintbrush. You just click and drag and it's like paint. That's why it's got the paintbrush on it, on the actual symbol. So to take away, you switch to the minus. To add, you go back on the plus sign. This is a pretty decent selection for now. The other thing I wanted to show you guys is actually cutting out part of your image. And I think I might do like a tutorial on its own for this because it's like a whole new world when you can start cutting out pieces of your image. So what I did was I switched to that move tool. This is where that move tool starts to be more exciting because you can move your images around, change the size if you want to, which I'm not going to go over right now, but maybe later or in another tutorial. And then back in this layers panel that I talked about earlier, we've now got a whole second layer with, I wish I could zoom in and show you, but notice there's this empty space in the middle. That's because you cut this part of the pastry out and you moved it. Okay. Alright, you guys, I had to pause it. The screencast tutorial app that I have, basically how I'm giving you this video, I only have 15 minutes allowed. But I've only got one other tool to go over, so I want to get it done as soon as I can. You're going to right click on that quick selection tool, and Pixlr people, this is the last tool you'll be working with. This is called the magic wand tool, and what it does is selects part of your image based off of colors. So notice how as soon as I click on the image itself, selects all the blue or like colors in the image, or if you're not technically all, but down at the bottom, like it didn't select this initially, but that's because it's in the shadows. It's actually a different color than the other one. We'll change the hue again, just for kicks. I like the colors. And yeah, honestly, you guys, your picture doesn't have to look exactly like mine. Really what I want you to do is mess around with selection tools, try some of the stuff that I talked about, save your edit. Oh yeah, saving, you hit File, Save As, and for the sake of this, if you have Photoshop, leave it as a Photoshop file. And you'll save it, bring up this pop-up, don't worry about it, and you'll turn in that edited file that says .psd. Okay, out of time. Good luck. Email me if you have questions. Bye.